Paul is the best thing that could ever happen to Carla.
Once again, it's Murder and Mayhem Monday. Welcome back. My name is Franklin James, the serial author, and I hope you guys have a great and mayhem-less week. Now, because Valentine's Day is right around the corner, I thought I'd explore a different avenue and focus on killer couples. And in today's episode, I'll be diving into the chilling case of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka, the so-called Ken and Barbie Killers. Two people who appeared to be attractive, charming, and deeply in love. You know, the picture-perfect couple. Yet behind closed doors, they were a sadistic duo responsible for some of Canada's most notorious crimes. But what drove them to commit such monstrous acts? And who really influenced their decision-making? From the shocking tapes that exposed their brutality to Karla's controversial plea deal, this episode will unpack the disturbing case of the Ken and Barbie Killers, in a marriage built upon murder. Now, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka became infamous for their crimes in Canada. Crimes that consisted of sexual assaults, torture, and murders that shocked the world. And people questioned who would even be capable of committing such horrific crimes. I mean, from the outside looking in, Paul and Karla were the ideal couple, attractive, charming, and successful. Yet, behind their polished facades, their relationship centered around manipulation, domination, and depravity. And I think this case challenges our assumptions about what evil looks like. It compels us to confront the psychological dynamics of control, coercion, and complicity. Did Paul Bernardo really force Karla Homolka to commit these heinous crimes? Or was she a willing participant? Either way, they were both responsible. It's food for thought. But let's get into it. Now let's begin with Paul Bernardo. He was born in 1964 in Scarborough, Ontario. Outwardly, he was described as a clean-cut, charming young man. Yet underneath, there was a darkness that would surface early on. Paul's childhood was marked by instability. His father, Kenneth, was charged with sexual offenses, and his mother reportedly revealed to him that he was the product of an extramarital affair. And this newfound revelation seemed to affect him deeply, fueling feelings of inadequacy and resentment. He may have also felt betrayed and likely possessed a lot of repressed anger. Now, as Paul Bernardo entered adulthood, his charm and confidence made him popular with women, but his relationships centered around manipulation and violence. In fact, by the late 1980s, Paul had begun his spree as the Scarborough rapist, committing a series of brutal sexual assaults that would later be linked to him through DNA evidence. Paul Bernardo was a sexual sadist who lacked empathy. He loved being in control, clearly possessing psychopathic traits. But now, let's switch our attention to Carla Homolka, the unsuspecting wife. She was born in 1970 and grew up in a middle-class family in St. Catharines, Ontario. She was described as bright, outgoing, and well-liked by her peers. By all accounts, Carla seems like a normal, ambitious young woman. But when Carla met Paul in 1987, everything changed. She was 17 and he was 23, and their connection was instant and intense. Paul's charm swept Carla off her feet, but it quickly became clear that their relationship was unhealthy. Over time, Paul's controlling behavior and sadistic tendencies began to have an influence over Carla. She became deeply submissive to his will, which speaks to his psyche, right? I mean, he wasn't going to let Carla do what his mother did to him and his father, that act of betrayal, which is probably why he chose her in the first place. She was younger and likely easier to manipulate. And from what I've gathered, it was either going to be Paul's way or he'd force you to bend to his will. which makes Paul and Carla's relationship so chilling. It was the dynamic of power and control. Experts have analyzed their relationship extensively, and many believe that Paul's dominance over Carla played a significant role in their crimes. From what I've discovered, Paul's sadistic nature was evident early on. He often fantasized about controlling and degrading women, which makes sense because he likely felt wronged and hurt by the women in his past, especially his mother. And on top of that, he probably felt rejected and abandoned by his biological father. Thus, he became vindictive, feeling the need to assert his superiority over women. And Carla, whether out of fear, love, or desire to please him, became complicit in his dark fantasies. In fact, she went beyond complicity. She facilitated and even participated in the abuse, which tells me that she likely felt insecure about herself. She probably had low self esteem, no self worth, and was willing to do anything to keep a man like Paul happy. Now, one of the most horrifying aspects of this case centers around what Carla did to her younger sister, 15-year-old Tammy Homolka. Under Paul's influence, Carla drugged her 15-year-old sister so that Paul could assault her, which is just unfathomable, right? That she even let that happen. Her own sister, her own family. It's sick. It's vile. But it also speaks to how much control Paul had over Carla. And tragically, as a result, 15-year-old Tammy Homolka died. And Tammy's death demonstrated Carla's total and utter submission to Paul's twisted desires. But what drove Paul and Carla to commit such heinous crimes? What drove Paul and Carla to go on their murderous spree? Paul Bernardo exhibited traits consistent with narcissistic personality disorder and psychopathy. He thrived on power, control, and domination. His crimes weren't just about physical violence. They were about asserting his superiority and feeding his sense of entitlement. Carla Homolka, on the other hand, is a more complex figure. Some psychologists argue that she was a victim of coercive control, manipulated by Paul into committing crimes that she wouldn't have otherwise. However, others point out that Carla actively participated in the abuse and made independent decisions that suggest she wasn't simply a passive victim. She's been described as a hybrid offender, someone who is both a victim and a perpetrator. Her desire to please Paul, combined with her own lack of empathy, created the perfect storm. I mean, between 1990 and 1992, Paul and Carla committed a series of brutal crimes, including the murders of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. And their crimes were premeditated, meticulously planned, and shockingly cold-blooded. The couple even videotaped their assaults, further highlighting their sense of invincibility. And those tapes were a way for them to relive their heinous crimes. In essence, those tapes were their trophies, a way for their crimes to live on well after they were committed. But when they were finally caught, their dynamic shifted. Carla Homolka struck a controversial plea deal, portraying herself as a victim of Paul's manipulation. She provided testimony against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. The deal, often referred to as the deal with the devil, sparked an outrage when the videotapes later revealed her active role in the crimes. But you know what? I think two things can be true. She may have felt hopeless, afraid, and vulnerable at the beginning of their marriage, but soon realized once she participated in those horrific crimes, she finally felt powerful and in control for the first time in her life. She was no longer the victim. The woman they assaulted, tortured, and murdered were. The roles were reversed. Perhaps in her mind, it was better them than her. In the end, the case of Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka leaves us with lingering questions about culpability, manipulation, and the nature of evil. How much of Carla's involvement can be attributed to coercion, and how much was a reflection of her own desires? Can someone be both, victim and perpetrator? A hybrid offender? Who knows? But one thing is certain. The Ken and Barbie Killers shattered the illusion that evil wears an ugly face. And their case reminds us that darkness can lurk behind even the most charming smiles. So stay diligent and be safe. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And I do ask that you stab that like button and subscribe. Leave a comment and let me know what you think about the Ken and Barbie Killers. Was Carla manipulated, or did she know what she was doing? Share this video out there, smash that bell for notifications, and if possible, avoid mayhem on Valentine's Day.
Did you ever get caught? Did you ever get caught? No, never, never. Why? I'm a deadly innocent guy.